Your father left very specific instructions. The lawyer's voice crackled through my phone at 7 in the morning. I was standing in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hand, while Pulse sat at my feet looking up at me with those big round eyes. 3 years. 3 years since my father had called me heartless and told me to never come back. 3 years since I had heard his voice. I did not cry. I sat down on the kitchen floor, and Pulse climbed into my lap, pressing his warm body against my chest the way he always did when he sensed something was wrong. "Mr. Mercer? Are you still there?" "I am here," I said. "When did he die?" "4 days ago. A heart attack." The lawyer paused. I understand the irony is not lost on anyone. My father, Dr. Richard Mercer, chief of cardiology at Boston General Hospital for 22 years, the man who had saved over 3,000 hearts in his career, had died because his own heart had failed him. And his last living relative, the son he had called Heartless, was sitting on a cold kitchen floor holding a French bulldog named Pulse. I should have seen this coming. The signs were all there, stretching back 35 years. My name is Daniel Mercer, and this is the story of how a dying puppy taught my father something he spent a lifetime refusing to learn. I grew up in a house where achievement was the only currency that mattered. My father was a third-generation physician. His father had been a surgeon. His grandfather had been one of the first black doctors to practice in Boston in the 1920s. The Mercer name meant medicine. It meant saving lives. It meant legacy. Our house in Brookline was beautiful in the way museums are beautiful. High ceilings, polished hardwood floors, walls lined with medical degrees and photographs of my father shaking hands with hospital administrators. Everything had its place. Everything was controlled. Even as a child, I knew better than to leave toys on the floor or fingerprints on the glass. My mother had died when I was 4, a car accident on a rainy Tuesday afternoon that left my father with a son he did not know how to raise and a grief he never learned how to express. I have only fragments of memory from before the accident. The smell of her perfume, the sound of her humming while she cooked, the way she would hold me in her lap and read stories, doing different voices for each character. After she died, the house went quiet. My father poured everything into his work. The hospital became his home, his patients became his family, and I became the project he was determined not to fail. "You have the hands of a surgeon," he would tell me when I was 10, examining my fingers like they were instruments. "Steady, precise. You will make an excellent doctor someday." I did not want to be a doctor. I wanted to play piano. The first time I realized I loved music, I was 6 years old. Mrs. Chun, our neighbor, was a retired piano teacher who gave lessons to children in the neighborhood. I heard her playing through our shared wall one afternoon, something classical and beautiful and sad, and I stood there frozen, my ear pressed against the wallpaper, tears streaming down my face without understanding why. My father found me like that. He asked what was wrong. I told him the music was so pretty it made me cry. He frowned. "Music is supposed to be pleasant, Daniel. It should not make you cry." But that was exactly why I loved it. Music could make you feel things you did not have words for. It could reach into the quiet places inside you and give them a voice. Mrs. Chun started giving me lessons when I was 7. My father allowed it because he believed extracurricular activities looked good on college applications. He did not know that I spent every spare moment at her house, practicing scales until my fingers ached, learning to read sheet music like a second language. "You have a gift," Mrs. Chun told me when I was 9. "A real gift. Have you thought about conservatory?" I had not. I did not even know what conservatory meant. But something in her voice, something serious and excited and proud, made my heart beat faster. The first time I told my father I wanted to be a musician, I was 12 years old. We were sitting in his study, surrounded by medical textbooks and framed photographs of him with grateful patience. I had just come home from my piano lesson, and Mrs. Patterson, who had taken over for Mrs. Chun after she moved away, had told me I could audition for the junior conservatory program. "Piano," my father repeated, like I had said something in a foreign language. "You want to play piano. Mrs. Patterson says I could be really good. She says I have. Mrs. Patterson is paid to encourage you." That is her job. He leaned back in his leather chair, studying me with that clinical expression I would come to know so well. Music is a hobby, Daniel. It is something you do on weekends. It is not a career. But Dad, this discussion is over. And it was. For years, it was. I continued piano lessons in secret, practicing at school during lunch breaks, at Mrs. Patterson's house on weekends when I told my father I was at the library. Music became my hidden language, the thing that made me feel alive in a house where everything felt cold and antiseptic. My father never noticed. He was too busy preparing me for a future I did not want. The pressure started early. When I was 13, he hired a tutor to help me get ahead in science and math. When I was 15, he enrolled me in a summer program at Harvard Medical School designed for high school students interested in medicine. I spent 8 weeks shadowing residents and observing surgeries and pretending to be fascinated by things that made me want to vomit. How was it? My father asked when I came home, his eyes bright with expectation. Great, I lied. Really educational. He smiled. Actually smiled. I had seen him smile maybe 5 times in my entire childhood, and this was one of them. I learned something important that day. My father's love was conditional. It was tied to performance, to achievement, to becoming the person he had decided I should be. The real me, the one who cried at music and dreamed of concert halls, was not someone he wanted to know. So I buried that person. For years, I buried him deep. High school was a blur of AP classes and extracurricular activities designed to look good on medical school applications. I was president of the science club. I volunteered at a free clinic on weekends. I maintained a 4.0 GPA and scored in the 99th percentile on my SATs. On paper, I was the perfect candidate. Inside, I was drowning. The only thing that kept me sane was music. I would sneak down to the piano in our living room after my father went to sleep, playing with the soft pedal pressed down so the sound would not carry. Those midnight hours were the only time I felt like myself. The only time I could breathe. I remember the day I got accepted to Johns Hopkins for pre-med. My father had made phone calls, pulled strings, written letters of recommendation that glowed with praise for a son he barely knew. When the acceptance letter arrived, he actually smiled again. That was 2 smiles in 5 years. "This is the beginning," he said, holding the letter like it was a holy document. 4 years of undergraduate, 4 years of medical school, then residency. By the time you are 30, you will be Dr. Daniel Mercer. 3rd generation. I nodded. I smiled. I felt nothing. I lasted 2 years. The breaking point came during my sophomore year organic chemistry final. I sat in that examination room, surrounded by 200 other students who wanted to be doctors, and I could not write a single answer. My hand would not move. My mind had gone completely blank. Not because I did not know the material, but because I suddenly realized that I could not do this for the rest of my life. I could not spend another 50 years pretending to be someone I was not. I walked out of that exam. I walked across campus to the music building, and I auditioned for the jazz studies program. The audition was terrifying. I had not played seriously in months, too overwhelmed with coursework to practice. My hands were shaking as I sat down at the unfamiliar piano in the unfamiliar room, facing a panel of 3 professors who would decide my fate. I played Thelonious Monk's Round Midnight. I played it the way I had always wanted to play it, not technically perfect but emotionally true, letting the sadness and longing pour out of me like water from a broken dam. When I finished, there was silence. Then the professor in the middle, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, leaned forward. "Where have you been hiding?" she asked. I got in. Full scholarship. I did not tell my father until 6 months later, when I had already transferred and it was too late to change my mind. I drove home for Thanksgiving, sat down at his dining room table, and told him I was no longer going to be a doctor. The silence lasted for nearly a full minute. I watched his face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally settle on something I had never seen before. Rage. Pure volcanic rage. "What did you say?" "I transferred to the conservatory. I am studying music. Jazz piano." My father set down his fork very carefully, the way he did everything. Precise. Controlled. but his hands were trembling. You threw away Johns Hopkins. You threw away medicine. For music. I was miserable, Dad. I was dying inside. Dying inside. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you know what dying inside actually looks like, Daniel? I will tell you. It looks like a 42-year-old woman on my operating table whose heart gives out because she waited too long to get help. It looks like children who will never see their mother again. That is what dying looks like. Not sitting in a comfortable classroom feeling unfulfilled. That is not fair. Fair. He stood up from the table, and for the first time in my life, I saw real anger in his eyes. Not the cold disappointment I was used to, actual rage. I have spent 20 years building a path for you. I have sacrificed everything to give you opportunities my father never had. Opportunities his father never had. And you throw it away because you want to play piano? I want to be happy. Happy. He said the word like it was obscene. Your mother wanted to be happy too. She wanted to take that shortcut through the rain instead of waiting for the traffic to clear. She wanted to save 10 minutes. And now she has been dead for 18 years. I felt like he had slapped me. That is not the same thing. It is exactly the same thing. Selfishness. Short-term thinking. A complete disregard for the people who depend on you. He walked to the door of the dining room and opened it. Get out of my house. Dad, please. Can we just talk about this? There is nothing to talk about. You have made your choice. You have chosen entertainment over saving lives. You have chosen self-indulgence over responsibility. You have chosen to throw away everything this family has built for 3 generations. I am still your son. Something shifted in his face then. Something closed off like a door slamming shut. No, he said. You are not. My son was going to be a doctor. My son was going to carry on this family's legacy. You are just someone who looks like him. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. You cannot mean that. I have never meant anything more in my life. His face was like stone. You want to throw away everything I built for you? Fine. But you will do it without my help, without my money, without my name. And when you fail, and you will fail, do not come crawling back here expecting me to fix it. I am not going to fail. We will see. He stepped aside to let me pass. Now get out. I have patience to see tomorrow. Real people with real problems who actually need me. I walked to the door. I turned back one last time. I love you, Dad. He did not answer. He just stood there, holding the door open, waiting for me to leave. I walked out of that house with nothing but the clothes on my back and $200 in my wallet. I was 20 years old, and my father had just erased me from his life like I was a failed experiment. That was 15 years ago. For the first 5 years, I waited for him to call. I checked my phone constantly, jumped every time I saw a Massachusetts area code, convinced myself that any day now he would realize he had overreacted and reach out. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday, I found myself staring at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. I finished my degree in music. I was good, but I was not great, not good enough to make it as a professional jazz pianist. I played some gigs, did some recording sessions, taught private lessons to wealthy families who could afford $200 an hour for their children to learn chopsticks. But that was not what I wanted. I did not want to teach rich kids who would forget everything the moment they stopped taking lessons. I wanted to make a real difference. I wanted to give someone else what Mrs. Chun had given me, that first spark of recognition, that moment when music becomes something alive. So I pivoted. I got my teaching certificate. I started working at a community music center in Philadelphia, teaching piano to kids whose parents could not afford expensive private lessons. Kids from neighborhoods where there were no pianos in the homes, no money for instruments, no one to tell them that music could change their lives. The pay was terrible. $16 an hour, no benefits, no job security. I lived in a studio apartment the size of a parking space in a building where the heat worked maybe half the time. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches and learned to cook rice in about 50 different ways. I had no savings, no safety net, no one to call if things got bad. But for the first time in my life, I was doing something that mattered to me. I was helping children discover the same joy I had found in music, the same escape from lives that felt too small or too hard or too cold. Marcus was 11 years old when he started lessons with me. He had been kicked out of 2 other programs for behavior problems. His mother worked 3 jobs and his father was in prison. He came to his first lesson with a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the enemy. "I do not want to be here," he announced. "Okay," I said. "So why are you?" He shrugged. "My mom made me. She said I need a hobby that is not getting in trouble." "Fair enough." I gestured to the piano. "You ever played before?" "Piano is for girls." I laughed. "Tell that to Thelonious Monk, or Duke Ellington, or Ray Charles." He did not know who any of those people were, so I showed him. I pulled up videos on my phone and played them, watching his face change as he heard jazz for the first time. Really heard it, the way I had heard it through Mrs. Chen's wall when I was 6 years old. By the end of that first lesson, Marcus was asking questions. By the end of the month, he was practicing every day on the keyboard I loaned him. By the end of the year, he was playing Monk, his own versions, clumsy and imperfect and absolutely alive. His mother called me crying the day he played his first recital. "I do not know what you did," she said. "But he is a different kid. He comes home from school and goes straight to that keyboard. He has not been in trouble once since he started with you." I had done what someone once did for me. I had shown a kid that there was more to life than the world he had been born into. I had given him a door. That was worth more than any salary. I thought about reaching out to my father a few times during those years. I drafted emails I never sent. I drove to Boston once and parked outside his house for 3 hours, watching the lights go on and off, trying to work up the courage to knock on the door. I imagined what I would say. I imagined what he would say. I imagined him looking at me with that cold expression and telling me again that I was not his son. I never did knock. The last thing he had said to me kept echoing in my head. "You are not my son." If he did not want me, then I did not need him. I was 32 when I found Pulse. It was a February evening, bitter cold, the kind of Philadelphia winter that gets into your bones and stays there. I was walking home from the music center after a long day of lessons. My last student, a 9-year-old girl named Keisha, had finally mastered the first movement of Heartless, and I was still riding that high when I heard the sound. A whimper, faint, almost lost in the noise of traffic and wind. I stopped walking, listened. There it was again, coming from the alley between 2 brownstones. Every instinct told me to keep walking. This was not a great neighborhood. I had been mugged twice in the 3 years I had lived here. Alleys were not safe places to explore after dark. But that sound, that helpless, desperate sound, pulled at something inside me. I walked into the alley. He was huddled behind a dumpster, shivering so hard I could see it from 10 feet away. A French bulldog, maybe 6 months old, with a brindle coat covered in mud and what looked like blood. One of his ears was torn. His ribs were visible through his thin coat. He looked up at me with huge, terrified eyes and whimpered again. "Hey there," I said softly, crouching down. "Hey, it is okay. I am not going to hurt you." He tried to back away but could not. His back legs were not working right, just scraping uselessly against the frozen concrete. Someone had thrown this dog away like garbage. Had probably hurt him first. I took off my coat and wrapped him in it, lifting him gently against my chest. He weighed almost nothing, just bones and shivering fur. His heartbeat felt wrong against my chest, irregular, fluttering like a bird trapped in a cage. The emergency vet was 6 blocks away. I ran the entire distance. "He has a heart murmur," the vet told me an hour later. Her name was Dr. Okonkwo, a small woman with kind eyes and a matter-of-fact voice. A significant one, grade 4 out of 6, probably congenital, combined with the malnutrition, hypothermia, and what looks like blunt force trauma. Honestly, I am surprised he is still alive. I looked at the dog on the examination table. His eyes were half closed, but he was watching me, trusting me. This creature who had been thrown away by everyone, who had no reason to trust anyone, was trusting me. "Can you help him?" She hesitated. There is a surgery that could correct the heart defect. But I need to be honest with you. It is expensive. We are talking about $2,800 to $3,200, depending on complications, plus ongoing medication, follow-up appointments, rehabilitation. I had $342 in my checking account. My rent was due in a week. I had no credit cards, no savings, no one to borrow from, no safety net. What happens if he does not get the surgery? Dr. Okonkwo's face softened. A few months, maybe. He will seem okay for a while. He might even seem normal. But his heart is working too hard, and eventually it will give out. Could happen any time. He could be fine one day and gone the next. I thought about all the hearts my father had saved. All the lives he had extended, the families he had kept together, the children who still had parents because of his skill. I thought about how he had looked at me and called me heartless. And I thought about this dog, this broken, abandoned, dying dog who had looked at me and decided to trust. Do it, I said. Mr. Mercer, I need to be very clear about the financial commitment here. We require a deposit of. I understand. I did not know how I was going to pay for it. I did not know how I was going to pay my rent or buy food or survive the next month. But I knew I could not walk away from this. Not from those eyes. Not from that trust. Do the surgery. Please. Dr. Okonkwo studied my face for a long moment. She saw something there, I think. Something that made her decision for her. There is a payment plan we can work out, she said finally. Interest-free over 18 months. And I have some samples of the medications he will need. That should help for the first few weeks. Thank you. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. She looked at the dog, still wrapped in my coat. He has a long road ahead. But something tells me he is in good hands. The surgery took 4 hours. I sat in that waiting room the entire time, hands clasped between my knees, bargaining with a God I was not sure I believed in. Please let him live. Please. I will figure everything else out. I will work extra shifts. I will sell everything I own. I will find a way. Just let him live. When Dr. Okonkwo came out and told me the surgery had been successful, I cried for the first time since my mother's funeral. I named him Pulse. It was a joke at first, a dark little piece of humor that only I would understand. My father, the famous cardiologist, had called me Heartless. Now I was keeping alive a dog with a heart that did not work right. A dog I had named after the very thing my father had spent his life monitoring in other people. But as the weeks passed and Pulse grew stronger, the name started to feel like something else. Something true. He was my pulse. He was the thing that kept me going, that gave rhythm to days that had felt empty and purposeless. He was proof that caring about something, really caring, was not weakness. It was the only thing that made life worth living. I found ways to make it work. I picked up extra piano lessons, tutoring wealthy kids on the weekends for triple my normal rate. I sold the few valuable things I owned, including my grandmother's pearl earrings that I had been saving for some imagined future wedding. I took a second job playing background piano at a hotel lobby 3 nights a week, earning tips from tourists who did not listen but at least dropped dollars in the jar. I ate rice and beans for 3 months straight. Lost 15 pounds I did not have to lose. Skipped meals so I could afford Pulse's medications. But every night, I came home to Pulse, and he would climb into my lap, and his heartbeat, steady now, regular now, would thump against my chest, and I would think, this is enough. This is everything. He changed things at the music center too. I started bringing him to work with me, and he became a kind of therapy dog for the kids. The ones who were too shy to speak would talk to Pulse. The ones who were angry would calm down when he climbed into their laps. Marcus, who had never been gentle with anything in his life, would sit on the floor with Pulse for 20 minutes before each lesson, just stroking his fur and telling him about his day. You know what I like about Pulse? Marcus said one day. He does not judge. He just likes you because you are there. That was it exactly. Pulse did not care about achievement or legacy or success. He did not care if you were a doctor or a musician or a kid from the wrong side of town. He just loved. Purely, completely, without conditions. It was the kind of love I had been looking for my whole life. I did not know that someone was watching. The first time I noticed something strange was about 3 months after the surgery. I was walking Pulse in the park near my apartment, and I could have sworn I saw the same man 3 times in the span of an hour. Gray jacket, baseball cap, always on the periphery of my vision. When I looked directly at him, he was always doing something innocuous, looking at his phone, tying his shoe, feeding pigeons. I told myself I was being paranoid. Years of living alone in a rough neighborhood had made me jumpy. But I kept seeing him, or people like him. A woman reading a newspaper at the cafe where I grabbed coffee every morning, always there at exactly the same time, always leaving right after I did. A man sitting in a car outside the music center, always there when I arrived, always gone when I left. Little glitches in the pattern of my life that did not quite add up. One night, I was walking Pulse home late after a gig at the hotel. A car pulled up beside us, drove slowly for about a block, then sped away. I got a glimpse of the driver. He was holding something up, like he was taking a picture. After a while, I stopped noticing. Or maybe I just convinced myself there was nothing to notice. My life was small, predictable, unremarkable. I was a piano teacher who lived alone with a rescue dog. Who would bother watching someone like me? 3 years passed. Pulse grew from a shivering skeleton into a sturdy, happy dog with a personality twice his size. He greeted every student at the music center like they were his long-lost best friend. He learned to sit on the piano bench next to me while I played, his ears perking up at certain chords, his tail wagging at certain melodies. He slept at the foot of my bed every night, and every morning he woke me up by standing on my chest and licking my face until I surrendered. Marcus graduated from the Music Center program and got a scholarship to a performing arts high school. Keisha learned to play Chopin. A shy kid named Deshaun, who had never spoken above a whisper, performed a solo at the winter recital and got a standing ovation. I was 35 years old. I was making enough money to pay my bills with a little left over. I had friends, real friends, people from the music center and the neighborhood who invited me to dinners and birthday parties and holiday celebrations. I had built a life without my father's money, without his name, without his approval. I thought I had made peace with it. I thought I had accepted that he was gone from my life forever, that whatever bond we had once had was severed beyond repair. Then the phone rang on a February morning, 3 years to the day after I had found Pulse in that alley. Mr. Mercer? This is Gerald Patterson from Patterson and Associates. I am your father's attorney. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Pulse climbed into my lap, pressing against me like he always did when something was wrong. Your father passed away 4 days ago. I am very sorry for your loss. Sorry for my loss. Like I had lost something. Like there was anything left to lose. How did he die? A heart attack. It was very sudden. He was at the hospital between surgeries. One of the nurses found him in his office. The lawyer paused. He left a will and some other materials. I think you should come to Boston as soon as possible. Why? Because, Gerald Patterson said slowly, as if choosing each word with care. Your father spent the last 3 years of his life compiling the most extensive documentation I have ever seen. About you. About everything you have done since he stopped speaking to you. And I think you need to see it in person. I drove to Boston that night. Pulse sat in the passenger seat, his face out the window, tongue flapping in the cold air. I drove for 5 hours through darkness and snow, my mind completely blank, unable to process what the lawyer had said. The last 3 years of his life, compiling documentation about me. Gerald Patterson's office was in a brownstone in Back Bay, all dark wood and leather chairs and the musty smell of old money. He was waiting for me when I arrived at 8 in the morning, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the tired eyes of someone who had seen too many family tragedies play out over inheritance disputes. Thank you for coming so quickly, he said, shaking my hand. Please sit down. Can I get you some water? Coffee? No. Just tell me what is going on. He nodded and sat behind his desk. Pulse settled at my feet. Before we begin, I need to tell you something. Patterson leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. I have been practicing law for 41 years. I have handled estates worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I have seen families torn apart by greed and reunited by loss. But I have never, in all my years, seen anything like what your father created. What do you mean? Patterson stood up and walked to a cabinet in the corner of his office. He opened it and pulled out a stack of boxes. Not files. Boxes. At least a dozen of them, each one labeled with dates. 3 years ago, approximately 2 weeks after you found that dog, your father contacted a private investigation firm, one of the best in the country. He paid them a retainer of $20,000 a month to monitor your life. I stared at him. $20,000 a month? For 3 years. Over $700,000 in total. Patterson set the first box on his desk. They monitored your movements, your relationships, your finances, your work, everything. He was spying on me. More than spying. Patterson opened the box. Inside were hundreds of photographs. Photographs of me walking Pulse in the park. Photographs of me teaching at the music center. Photographs of me buying groceries, eating dinner at cheap restaurants, playing piano at the hotel lobby. He had a team of 3 investigators working in rotating shifts, Patterson continued. They compiled daily reports, activity logs, financial analyses, character assessments based on observed behavior. Character assessments? Patterson pulled out a folder and handed it to me. The cover read, Subject Mercer, D. Character Evaluation. Month 18. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a typed report, single-spaced, 15 pages long. Subject continues to demonstrate exceptional commitment to students despite ongoing financial hardship. This month, subject provided free lessons to 3 additional students whose families could not afford payment, bringing total of unpaid students to 11. When questioned by center director about financial sustainability, subject stated, "These kids need this more than I need the money." Subject's bond with canine companion, Pulse, remains central focus of daily routine. Veterinary records indicate subject has maintained perfect compliance with all prescribed medications and follow-up appointments despite significant cost. During observed financial crisis in month 15, subject prioritized canine's heart medications over own meals. Subject was observed eating only rice for 6 consecutive days to afford prescription refill. I could not breathe. I flipped through the pages, each one more detailed than the last. Subject showed exceptional patience with difficult student, Marcus T., age 11, who exhibits signs of behavioral issues likely stemming from unstable home environment. Where other instructors have reportedly given up on this student, subject continues to invest additional time and emotional energy. On 3 occasions this month, subject provided student with meals from own limited funds. Student has shown marked improvement in both behavior and musical ability. Mother reports transformation in attitude at home. Subject observed intervening in altercation outside music center between 2 teenagers. De-escalated situation without violence despite potential risk to personal safety. Waited with injured party until ambulance arrived. Refused recognition or thanks. When asked by witness why he intervened, subject replied, "Someone had to." Character assessment summary, month 18. Subject demonstrates consistent pattern of empathy, self-sacrifice, and genuine concern for vulnerable populations. Financial decisions consistently prioritize others over self. Social interactions marked by kindness, patience, and lack of judgment. Character evaluation significantly exceeds parameters established by client. Recommendation: consider direct contact rather than continued surveillance. He read these. I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Every single one. Patterson's voice was soft. He had them delivered weekly by secure courier. He kept them in chronological order in his study at home. His housekeeper told me he would spend hours reading them, sometimes late into the night. Patterson pulled out more folders, each one thicker than the last. There are reports from every month, 36 in total, each one more detailed than the last. He asked them to document everything, not just what you did but how you did it, the expression on your face when you helped someone, the way you talked to your students, the way you treated strangers. I opened another folder at random. Month 27. Subject observed at community event organizing free music lessons for underprivileged children. Despite receiving no compensation and working 12-hour day, subject exhibited consistent positive attitude and genuine engagement with all participants. When elderly attendee expressed difficulty hearing, subject immediately repositioned himself and repeated instructions patiently 3 times without any visible frustration. Notable incident. Subject encountered homeless individual outside venue requesting money. Rather than providing cash, subject returned 20 minutes later with hot meal purchased from nearby restaurant. Subject sat with individual for 45 minutes, engaging in conversation. Upon departure, subject was observed giving individual contact information for local shelter and job assistance program. Follow-up indicates individual subsequently accessed these services. Assessment. Subject's compassion appears genuine and consistent across all observed interactions. No evidence of performative behavior or expectation of recognition. Pattern suggests deeply ingrained character trait rather than situational response. Another folder. Month 31. Subject's financial situation reached critical point this month. Bank records indicate balance of $47.23 following rent payment and utility bills. Subject was observed purchasing dog food and medication before purchasing any food for himself. For 3 consecutive days, subject's only observed meals were provided free at music center staff room. Despite financial strain, subject continued providing free lessons to 6 students whose families cannot afford payment. When center director offered to reduce subject's workload to accommodate financial situation, subject declined, stating that stability for students was more important than personal comfort. Subject's relationship with canine companion, Pulse, continues to demonstrate exceptional bond. Dog accompanies subject to work daily. Multiple witnesses report that subject speaks to dog as if to trusted friend, sharing details of day and seeking comfort during difficult moments. Veterinary records indicate dog's heart condition remains stable due to strict medication compliance. Notable observation. On day with 0 funds remaining in bank account, subject was observed sharing portion of his lunch, provided free by colleague, with street performer outside music center. When asked by colleague why he gave away food he needed, subject replied, "She looked hungry. I can get more tomorrow. I could feel Patterson watching me as I read. I could not look up. If I looked up, I would lose whatever composure I had left. The investigators sent me a separate note after month 31, Patterson said quietly. They said they had never seen anything like it. They asked your father if he wanted them to intervene, to help you anonymously somehow. He refused. He said you needed to do this on your own. That helping you secretly would be as bad as controlling you openly. But he was still watching. Yes, he could not stop watching. I think, by that point, watching you had become the most important thing in his life. I put down the folder. My hands were trembling. Why did he not just call me? Send one letter? Even just one? Patterson sighed. I asked him that question many times. The answer was always the same. He said he had forfeited the right to be in your life. He said he had been given 37 years to be a good father and had wasted almost all of them. He said watching you succeed without him was his punishment, and he deserved every moment of it. That is not punishment. That is cowardice. Perhaps, or perhaps it was the only kind of love he knew how to give anymore. The only way he knew to be present without causing more damage. Patterson leaned back in his chair. Your father was not a man who knew how to apologize. His whole life was about being right, about having the answers. When he realized how wrong he had been about you, it broke something in him. These reports, these letters, this surveillance, it was his way of being close to you without risking another rejection. He rejected me, not the other way around. I know, and he knew that too. That is why he could not bring himself to reach out. He was terrified that if he contacted you, you would tell him what he told you. That you would say he was not your father anymore. That you would give him exactly what he deserved. And he could not bear it. I thought about that for a long moment. About my father, alone in that big house, reading reports about my life, writing letters he would never send, crying over photographs of a son he had thrown away and a dog that son had saved. It was not forgiveness I felt. Not exactly. But something shifted inside me. Some small piece of the anger I had carried for 15 years loosened its grip. The housekeeper knew? She has worked for your father for 22 years. She said she had never seen him like this. She said he would sit in his study with those reports and cry. My father does not cry. He did, according to her, frequently. And he talked to the photographs. The ones of you and the dog. She said he would hold them and say he was sorry. I looked down at Pulse, who was looking up at me with those big trusting eyes. My father had photographs of us. My father had held those photographs and apologized to them. There is more, Patterson said. Much more. He pulled out another box, this one smaller, older looking. Inside were handwritten letters. Dozens of them. Maybe 100. These were found in his desk after he passed, Patterson said. They are addressed to you. He never sent them. I picked up the first letter. The handwriting was shaky, unfamiliar. My father's handwriting had always been precise, controlled, the handwriting of a surgeon who could not afford tremors. This looked like it had been written by someone whose hands would not stop trembling. Dear Daniel, I watched you give away your last $20 today. You did not know that was your last $20. You thought you had 40 in your account. But I can see your bank statements and I know. You had 20 and you gave it to that woman outside the grocery store. The one with the 2 children who were crying because they were hungry. You gave her your last $20 and then you went inside and bought rice. Just rice. Nothing else. Because that was all you could afford. I do not understand you. I have never understood you. I spent 60 years believing that success meant achievement, wealth, legacy. I built my entire identity around saving lives, around being indispensable, around being someone who matters. And then I watch you, my son who I called Heartless, give away money you cannot afford to give, to people you will never see again, with no expectation of recognition or gratitude. I was wrong about you. I have been wrong about everything. I could not finish the letter. My hands were shaking too hard. There are 87 letters, Patterson said gently. The earliest is dated 2 weeks after he hired the investigators. The most recent is from the day before he died. Why did he not send them? Why did he not just call? Patterson was quiet for a moment. I asked him that once. About a year ago when he came in to update his will. He said he did not deserve to contact you. He said he had spent 3 years watching you become the person he had always wanted to be, and he was too ashamed of himself to reach out. Ashamed. Your father was a complicated man. Brilliant, driven, completely incapable of admitting when he was wrong. His whole identity was built on being the smartest person in the room, the one who always knew best. When you left medicine, you challenged that identity. And instead of examining himself, he blamed you. Patterson opened another folder. But these reports changed him. Every month, he watched you make choices he never would have made. Give away money you needed. Help people who could not pay you back. Love a dog you found in an alley like he was the most precious thing in the world. And slowly, very slowly, he started to understand what he had missed. What do you mean? I mean that for 62 years, Richard Mercer believed that love was about achievement, about earning, about proving yourself worthy. And then he watched his son love unconditionally, without any expectation of return, and he realized that everything he believed was wrong. Patterson pulled out one final document. This is his will. I took it, but the words swam in front of my eyes. He left you everything, Patterson said. The house in Boston, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio, the life insurance policy, everything he spent his whole life building. How much? Approximately $6.8 million. I stared at him. There is one condition. Or rather, there was one request. Patterson reached into the smallest box and pulled out a single handwritten letter. This one on heavier paper, more formal. He wanted you to read this last. I took the letter. The handwriting was steadier this time, like he had taken days to write it, crossing out and rewriting until every word was exactly right. Dear Daniel, if you are reading this, then I am dead and Gerald has done what I asked. I am sorry that these are the circumstances under which you finally learn the truth. I should have had the courage to tell you myself. I did not. That is one more thing to add to the list of my failures as your father. 15 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I looked at my son and saw someone who had failed me, who had betrayed everything I believed in, who had thrown away his potential for something I considered worthless. I did not see the truth. I did not see that you were not failing me. You were becoming yourself. And becoming yourself, choosing your own path even when it cost you everything, took more courage than anything I ever did in an operating room. I called you Heartless. I have replayed that moment 10,000 times in my mind. Heartless. I said that word to my own son. My son who spent his last $300 saving a dying dog. My son who teaches children for almost no money because he believes everyone deserves the chance to discover something beautiful. My son who gives away what little he has because he cannot bear to watch someone else suffer. You are not heartless. You are the most compassionate person I have ever known. Your heart is so full that it spills over onto everyone around you. Students, strangers, animals. Everyone you meet is better for having known you. And I am the one who was heartless. I am the one who put achievement above love, legacy above connection, pride above my own child. I am the one who could not see past my own expectations to recognize the extraordinary person standing right in front of me. I do not expect your forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I threw you out of my life because you would not become the person I wanted you to be, and I spent 15 years too proud to admit I was wrong. But I want you to know that I watched you for 3 years. Every day, I received a report about your life. And every day, every single day, I was proud of you. Prouder than I ever was of anything I accomplished myself. Prouder than any patient I saved, any award I won, any recognition I received. None of it compared to watching my son choose kindness over comfort, love over security, others over himself. The money is yours. Do whatever you want with it. Give it all away to your students. Build a new music center. Donate it to the animal shelter where you got that ridiculous little dog. I do not care. You will do more good with it than I ever did. But if there is one thing I ask, one final request from a father who has no right to ask anything, keep Pulse close. Keep that dog who taught me what 60 years of medical training never could. That love is not about earning. It is about giving. That strength is not about control. It is about letting go. That a heart that breaks for others is not weak. It is the only kind worth having. I love you, Daniel. I always did. I was just too broken to show it. Be yourself. That is all I ever should have wanted for you. Your father, Richard. I sat in that leather chair for a long time, holding the letter, unable to speak. Pulse had climbed into my lap at some point. His heart that should not have survived, beat steadily against my chest. The boxes of evidence sat on the desk between us. 3 years of watching. 3 years of regret. 3 years of a father too proud to pick up the phone, writing letters he never sent to a son he had thrown away. He changed the will 6 times, Patterson said quietly. Each time he added more money, more properties, more instructions for how to find the things he wanted you to have. The photographs, the letters, the recordings. Recordings. Patterson nodded. There is a cassette tape in one of the boxes. He said you would know what it was. I found it later in the smallest box. The label read, Daniel plays piano. Age 8. I drove to my father's house that afternoon. Our house. The house I had grown up in, the house I had been thrown out of 15 years ago. It was exactly the same. The leather chairs in the study. The medical textbooks on the shelves. The photographs on the walls. My mother's face, frozen in time, smiling from a vacation we had taken when I was 3. But there was one new photograph, framed and mounted on the wall beside his desk, in a position of honor next to his diplomas and awards. Me and Pulse, laughing in the park. I walked through every room, Pulse trotting beside me. The kitchen where my father had told me I was not his son. The living room where I had practiced piano in secret. The bedroom where my mother had told me bedtime stories before the rain came and took her away. In his study, I found the tape player. Ancient, probably from the 80s. I put in the cassette and pressed play. The sound quality was terrible, but I could hear it. My 8-year-old fingers fumbling through Claire de Lune. Making mistakes, starting over, trying again. And underneath, almost inaudible, my father's voice. "That is beautiful, Danny. Keep playing. Keep playing." I buried my father 3 days later. His colleagues came, dozens of them, speaking about his brilliance, his dedication, his legacy. They did not know about the boxes. They did not know that the last years of his life had been spent watching his estranged son from afar, learning lessons that all his medical expertise had never taught him. I kept some of the money, bought a small house in Philadelphia with a garden for Pulse, set up scholarship funds at the music center, paid off Marcus's mother's debts, donated enough to the animal shelter that they would never turn away a sick animal again. And every night, I play piano while Pulse sits beside me on the bench, his ears perking up at the chords he likes best, his heartbeat steady against my hand when I reach down to pet him. I named him Pulse as a joke, a bitter little rebellion against a father who called me Heartless. But now, when people ask about his name, I tell them something different. Because he reminds me that every heart can heal, even the ones that seem beyond repair. Pulse looks up at me when I say this, trusting and patient and full of love he does not know how to hide. He does not understand his name. He just knows he is home. And somewhere, I think, my father finally understands that too. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Before you go, I have left 2 more stories here on your screen. Both from men who discovered that family is not always who you are born to. It is who stands by you when the truth comes out. Click on whichever one calls to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be the outsider looking in, that notification bell is your invitation. Until tomorrow, remember, your story matters, even if they tried to erase it.